Chapter 10. Mia and I didn't want to linger in the coffee shop too long in case we pushed our luck with Emily, so we called Roland and got him to pick us up outside. Mia also gave Victor a quick call to get him to gather the board for a meeting. Then we headed for the office, and I was feeling really good about the information we'd managed to get out of the barista. "I want you to come in with me this time," I said to Mia as we rode up in the elevator together. "Are you sure?" the blonde asked. "I can't really contribute anything." "You helped me get the info out of Emily," I said with a casual shrug. "I want you to be there." "It's been a while since I've been in a meeting," the Omega admitted with a soft laugh. "I can't promise I'm going to be much help. Just you being there for moral support is enough for me," I said. "Besides, if the board gets pissed that we let a rival go, I'm gonna need at least one person on my side." "You got it, St. James." Mia smirked at my words, and we were silent the rest of the way up. We didn't want to waste any time, so as soon as the elevator dinged open, we power-walked straight to the meeting room. The board obviously heard us coming from a mile off, so they weren't surprised. When we barged into the room, they were in their usual places. Victor was at the head of the table with Susan on his right. Collins was sitting all alone on one side where he belonged, and Lexi was a little hunched over in her chair in anticipation. "I've got good news and bad news," I said bluntly as I sat down in the seat at the head of the table and gestured for Mia to sit down on the one on my right. "Let's hear it," Victor said with a hopeful smile. "We managed to get more info out of the wolf who got away yesterday," I explained. "Namely, Drake is planning on attacking some of our shipment trucks, due on Monday." "That is very good news," the chairman said in a surprised tone. "Well done, Josh. Shall we divert the trucks to another route?" Susan suggested. "Divert them all except one," I said. "I'll follow the truck and stake it out until Drake rears his fat head." Mia stifled a laugh with her hand before quickly composing herself. I winked at the blonde, who blushed a little, before I turned back to the board. "If we were to even lose one truck of product, then it would not help our situation," Collins replied, and his face was pinched like he just sucked on a lemon. "Are you willing to put the product on the line?" "If it gets rid of Drake, yes," I said smoothly. "I'll cover the cost of the product in the truck." "We can't ask you to cover this," Lexi tried to reason with me. "You're not asking." I shrugged. "I'm offering, and as CEO it is my responsibility to neutralize this threat." "Very well." Victor nodded. "We shall keep one truck on the intended route." "You're certain you will cover the loss in profit?" "I don't think we have any other qualms with your decision." "So what's the bad news?" Collins asked with that same sour look on his face. "The bad news, Benjamin, is that a lot of Drake's pack are there against their will," I said, "which will make getting rid of them a little harder." "How is that bad news?" the greasy-haired treasurer asked. "Just go about fighting them the same way you have been." "It's not that simple." I shook my head. "I don't want to just kill them all. Not when they're acting against their will. Josh, in this world we can't hesitate on things like this," Susan explained, with a frown. "Forced or not, they are still pack members of our rival. We can't treat them any differently, is what she's trying to say," Lexi added. "If we were meticulous about these things, nothing would get done, and you'd be putting yourself in more danger if you tried to be careful about not harming them." "But there are missing people there," I protested. "People who could still go back to their families. I don't want innocent wolves to die." "I'm afraid you may not have a choice," the vice chair said sympathetically. "You cannot hesitate if it comes down to another fight, Josh. You will be putting your life at risk." "She's right, Josh," Mia murmured to me. "The betas won't hesitate even if they don't really want to do what they've been ordered to do. That's just how it works. Besides, you've had no problem killing them up until this point," Collins said with a smarmy smile. "Why the change of heart?" I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists at his words. I really needed to take my aggression regulators, or else something bad was going to happen one of these days, especially with greasy fuckers like him purposefully pressing my buttons. When I spoke with Emily, she told me the sort of shit Drake puts them through. I managed to get out through my anger. If I can spare them, I want to, no matter the risk. "How noble of you, St. James," Collins grumbled under his breath. "What the hell did you just say?" I asked as I rose from my chair. "I can hear Everything you fucking say, so why don't you say it with your chest? Collins, that's enough. He's just being smart, Josh. Susan tried to reason with me. No, he can say it to my fucking face. I spat and felt myself start to shift. My claws dug into the wood of the table that my hands were resting on, and I slowly started to grow taller. Colin's face was white as a ghost as I stared at him unblinkingly. I wasn't trying to, the treasurer stuttered. Say it to my face. I repeated myself with a growl. The board was still and stony silent. They didn't dare move an inch in case I blew up. But I didn't care. I couldn't care. Collins had pissed me off and I couldn't hold back the rage that started to brew inside. It was like molten lava was coursing through my veins and bubbling under my skin. I was a goddamn volcano ready to erupt at any second, and the only thing I could do was let it happen. How dare he get smart with me when the only thing I was trying to do was save people's lives, people who were taken from their beds just like Emily had said. If I were on the other side of this thing, and it was me who had been taken in the night, I would want at least someone to understand what it was that was happening to me and show a little bit of mercy. They were puppets on a string. Sure, there were those who joined Drake willingly, and I'd have no issues putting those sons of bitches out of their misery, but what about the ones forced against their will? Josh, Mia said softly from my side. Joshua, listen to me. I felt the blonde's hand on my shoulder, and I turned my head to see her looking up at me in worry. She nodded her head reassuringly and squeezed my shoulder. It's okay, she whispered to me before turning back to the board. Josh is trying to do something good, and we have to respect that. Not many alphas would even think twice about taking out a pack whether they were there by force or not. Mia's right, Victor quickly agreed. We aren't trying to criticize you for showing mercy. It is admirable, truly. We just want you to be aware of how dangerous it can be in our world. The Omega squeezed my shoulder again, and I felt myself start to calm down a little. But it wasn't enough. I was heated. I was pissed. After everything Emily told me, I still had to kill innocent betas for my own survival. It sucked even more because I knew the board was right. I couldn't leave it until the last minute to decide whether they were one of the good or bad ones. I needed to act fast in battle, and hesitating could cost me my life. It still didn't make the reality any less harder to deal with. I need to go, I said abruptly and pushed myself from the table, which left 10 claw marks in the dark oak. I pulled away from Mia's grasp and turned around to see a concerned look on her angelic face, but I fought back against the urge to stick by her side, because I didn't want the board to see me in this state. Collins was probably smug as shit at having got a reaction out of me, and I knew I needed to clear my head before I went and ripped his off. I stormed to the elevator and hit the underground parking lot button a little harder than I probably should have, and I spent the short journey down trying to calm my breathing. I was still half-shifted. I could feel my fangs poking into my bottom lip, and I flexed my hands out in front of me as if it would make my claws sink back in. So much rested on my shoulders. Even if I wasn't doing much in the office, I'd had to deal with so much shit since starting here. It was emotionally taxing, and I knew I'd have to get my emotions under control if I was gonna last here. I was an alpha and a CEO, two roles that required me to be a leader of something I had no experience in. I was out of my depth, but I had to learn. I had to adapt. The elevator dinged open, and I managed to fish out my phone from my suit pocket without tearing the fabric and quickly pressed on Matt's number. He picked up almost immediately, and I could hear Sally shouting at him in the background. Mom, I'm on the phone, Matt yelled. Hey, Josh. Despite how angry I was, I let out a rough-sounding chuckle at his sudden switch up. Matt, I need you to pick me up, I ground out as I felt another wave of anger wash over me again. Sure thing, man, my best friend said with a hint of worry in his voice. Where are you at? Lunar Corporation. I gritted my teeth. There's an underground parking lot. Tell the guards at the gate you're here to pick me up and let them smell you. Smell me? Matt spluttered out a laugh. What the fuck, man? They'll be able to smell my scent on you from the other night, I said with a pained groan. They'll know you're telling the truth. Right. Wolf thing. Got it. I'll be there in 10. I hung up as another wave hit me, and I felt my size grow even more. I needed to control myself. I needed to calm down. Of course, I'd left my pills back at my actual apartment when I needed them most. My hands shook as I clenched them at my side and focused on breathing deeply and evenly. It was harder to get a hold of my emotions when I didn't have someone like Mia by my side coaching me through it, but I'd have to get used to this. She couldn't always be there for me. Admittedly, I just left her in the lurch up there, but I couldn't stand being in that room any longer. It felt so small and cramped up there. And if I was gonna go full alpha, I'd need more room. The parking lot was pretty big, and there weren't that many cars parked in there this morning, so I decided to try and burn off some of the energy keeping me stuck in my shifted form. I started running laps and couldn't believe how much faster I was. It was like my legs were propelling me forward without me even having to think about it. I could run the entire length of the lot in under 30 seconds, whereas before, it probably would have taken me 10 minutes just to warm up enough to manage. The breeze that hit my face as I pushed myself faster helped cool me off, and I could feel my claws start to retract back into my fingers. Even as I started to shrink a little in height, my legs carried me faster than I ever thought possible. It was only when Matt honked the horn on his beaten-up Prius that had seen better days that I realized he had actually arrived. Jesus man, you're like the werewolf version of the Flash, Matt joked as I jogged over to his car. I needed to clear my head, I said, and I wasn't even out of breath. Guess it worked. Are you asking me if you're all hairy? My friend teased. Because you look pretty normal to me. Thanks, I chuckled and walked over to the passenger seat door. So where to, my liege? Matt drawled in a terrible British accent as he put the car in drive. The car dealership, whatever the fanciest one is in New York, I said as I buckled myself in. I'm gonna buy a new fucking car. Whoa, Joshua St. James is finally spending his money on something good. Matt hooted and drummed the steering wheel with his fingertips. Took you long enough. Damn right, I said with a grin. This isn't an impulse buy that's gonna financially cripple you though, is it? He asked as he started to pull out of the parking lot. Because as your best friend, I need to make sure you're not being reckless just because you're a bit heated. It needed to happen at some point. I shrugged. But taking my mind off the shit day I've had by buying a sweet new ride isn't going to hurt anyone. Well, in that case, Matt revved the engine. Let's go find you a brand new whip. Maybe I was feeling a little bit impulsive. Sure, running had made me physically calm down, but my mind was still running at 1,000 miles a minute. Impulse buy or not, I had the money for it. And this was something I knew I needed to do at some point, so it was probably better it was sooner rather than later. Besides, now that I decided to stay at my parents' penthouse, I didn't need to fork out for a brand new one. Plus, I didn't want to have to force Roland out every time I wanted to go somewhere. Granted, it was his job, but I still felt like it was a necessity for me to have my own car. This was just another step in me becoming my own man. A man my parents could be proud of. I rolled down the window as Maddie drove us out of the lot and into the bustling streets of New York City. Usually, the amount of noise that came from the streets was overwhelming, but the constant overload of chatter, shouting, and blaring horns stopped me from overthinking. You want me to put some music on? Matt asked as he noticed my stoic face just staring out the open window. No, I'm okay, I reassured him. The noise of the city, it's distracting me. That's good. He nodded. Can't say I'd enjoy hearing New York 100 times louder than what it already is, but whatever works for you, champ. Matt always knew how to make me laugh, which was practically a godsend at this point. We spent the rest of the ride with him joking around, and I knew he was doing it to help me cool off. And it worked. By the time we pulled up to the swanky car dealership, which was basically just a building of tall glass windows allowing us to see the sweet rides inside, I was completely calmed down, and I knew I wasn't going to accidentally shift when we went in there. Matt parked his Prius next to a brand new Bentley, which made him practically cackle in amusement. He mumbled something along the lines of his car being there to make the others look better, so he was technically doing these guys a favor. When we stepped into the car dealership, it felt like we were stepping into the future. White ceramic tiled floors shined so bright you could see your reflection in them, and the room was filled with super expensive cars I would never have even dreamed of looking at a week ago. Gentlemen, good afternoon. A smartly dressed car salesman greeted us with a controlled smile on his plastic-looking face. How can I help you today? I'm looking for something fast, I said. Well, in that case, I think we have plenty to offer you today, the salesman said. Is there a particular make or model you're looking for? Nothing in particular. I shrugged. What's the most expensive car you've got? Here. You're really going all out, huh? Matt mumbled to me in a surprised tone. Sure you don't want to just stick with a Bentley and call it a day? No way, man, I said with a smirk. I'm a CEO. I've got to have the best of. The best, right? I am so jealous of you right now, the curly-haired human said with a wistful sigh. If it's the most expensive you're after, we have an Aston Martin V12 Vantage S Roadster that might interest you, the salesman said. It has a top speed of 200 miles per hour and a jump from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Holy shit, Matt trailed off. That's pretty impressive. It is indeed, the salesman agreed. This beauty just cleared customs after being imported. It just arrived yesterday morning. And the price? I asked. $202,552, he said. Plainly. I didn't even blink since I could afford to buy a fleet of such cars, though I didn't want to go too crazy on spending so soon. Matt, on the other hand, sucked in a sharp breath when he heard the price, and I thought his eyes might pop out of his head. Are you interested? The salesman asked. Let's see it, I said. Like I said, price isn't an issue here. Follow me then, sir, the smartly dressed salesman said. Matt and I followed close behind him as he led us down a long row of shiny cars that had Matt practically drooling just from the sight of them. We had walked pretty much the entire length of the huge building when the salesman suddenly stopped in front of an incredible flashy red sports car. It was sleek and looked like something out of a Bond movie, and it was definitely not something I would have ever thought I'd be able to drive. It was perfect. This is it, I asked as I gently ran my hand along the hood of the car. This is it, sir. The salesman nodded. It's a two-door two-seater with a convertible roof. Amazing, I said breathlessly as I admired the car. Can I see the inside? Absolutely, the salesman said. Give me 2 minutes to get the keys. Then, you can take it out on a test drive if you like. I've got a feeling he's not going to need a test drive, Matt joked. He's in love. I think you might be right, I chuckled. Shall I bring the necessary paperwork just in case then? The salesman smirked. I think that would be a good idea, I said. Thank you. No worries at all, the salesman said politely. I'll be back with you, gentlemen, in a few minutes. Please peruse the rest of our collection at your leisure, in case anything else grabs your attention. We will. I nodded and watched as the salesman walked toward the back office to fetch the keys and paperwork. I can't believe you're getting this, Matt said in awe as he walked over to the passenger side of the car. Look at this thing, Josh. It's incredible. It's perfect. I grinned. It's goddamn fit for a king is what it is, my friend joked. God, this thing is gonna be a chick magnet. Well, anytime you want to pull some chicks, give me a ring, I said with a wink. I'm my best friend. Why? Are you telling me you're not gonna use this to your advantage and get a girl? Matt asked. Nah, I think I'm good. I shrugged. And is that because you already have a girl? He asked again with a knowing smirk. My eyes shot up to his, and I must have frozen for a moment because his smirk only grew wider. Bullseye, he whispered triumphantly to himself. He could read me like a book, and admittedly I really didn't have any interest in picking up chicks, as Matt liked to phrase it, because I was happy with whatever it was I had with Mia. Honestly, I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere, and if she didn't want our relationship to go any further than work colleagues, then that would be fine. I wasn't going to force her to be with me like other alphas would. She was an omega, sure, but that didn't mean I couldn't respect her. The car salesman returning brought me out of my thoughts, and when he flashed the keys at me, I couldn't keep the grin off my face. I clicked the button to unlock the doors, and Matt and I climbed inside. The interior was black and red, and it looked as sleek as the outside of the car. As soon as I sat down in the driver's seat, I knew this was the one. My hands trailed along the dashboard as I drank in every tiny, exquisite detail about this car. The roof is convertible. All you need to do is click that button on the fob to take it down, the salesman explained as he bent down to speak to me through the open door. I did as instructed and watched as the black roof retracted into the back of the car. It felt way more open now that the roof was off, and I was itching to drive this thing on the open road. Just the thought of picking up speed and feeling the wind in my hair was making me pumped, and I knew if I had my tail out it would be wagging like crazy. I'll take it, I said without even having to think about it. Excellent choice, sir, the salesman complimented. I'm happy to say you will be able to take this one out today. If I could just have you fill out these forms, and I'll need to take your driver's license and payment information. Sure, I said as I pulled out my wallet and swapped the forms in his hands. For my license and credit card. Here you go. Fantastic, he said. Once you're done filling out the forms, just leave them with our receptionist, Danica, and I'll have someone bring the car out front for you. Awesome, I said. Thanks for your help. Of course, sir, the salesman replied. I hope you're happy with your purchase. If you have any issues or questions, give me a call. The dealer passed me his card, which I pocketed with another thank you, and I quickly filled out all my insurance details and other information that was required on the forms. Matt was just silently admiring the interior of the car the whole time, and I kept chuckling to myself at him, mumbling under his breath about how cool it was. It only took me a couple of minutes to fill out the forms, so we closed up the car, and then I handed Danica the keys and forms at her desk. She returned my cards to me and let me know it had all gone through, which was another thing that seemed to blow Matt's mind, and she told us to wait outside for the car to be brought to us. Hey, if Lunar Corporation is hiring, you need to let me know, man, Matt said as we stepped into the midday breeze. I don't think everyone who works at Lunar Corporation is on that kind of paycheck. Matt, I chuckled. I'm just really lucky. Damn right you are, he said as he punched his fist in the air and started running on the spot. Josh, I'm pumped, man. You gotta let me come with you on your first drive. Of course, I said like it was obvious. As if I'd just leave you here with your Prius to watch me drive into the sunset. Hey, don't knock the Prius, Matt said in a mock-hurt tone. She gets me where I need to be eventually. Hey, who knows? I laughed. Maybe for your birthday you'll get a flashy new car from an anonymous gifter. Well, I track down the anonymous gifter and give him a fat kiss on the mouth if that happened, Matt joked back. Speaking of gifts, I said, and fished for the keys to my apartment in my pocket. You can have my old place. Wait, what? My best friend asked as he stared at the keys and then me in disbelief. Josh, are you serious? As I'll ever be. I shrugged. I've decided to move into my parents' place. Still need to pick some things up from my apartment, but it's yours if you want it. If I want it, Matt snorted. Of course I want it. Then it's yours, I said and dropped the keys into his hand. You can finally be free from the clutches of the matriarch. I'll even buy you a new bed since mine was busted. Trust me, Sally is gonna be as over the moon as I am. He snickered before his expression grew serious. This really means a lot, Josh. Thank you. Wait until you see the place, I said. It needs a bit of work. I'd take a hole in the ground over living with my mother for another day, Jay. Matt reassured me. Whatever you've got, I'll take it. Then enjoy my shoddy little apartment in Chinatown, Matthew. I grinned. I'll swing by and pick up a few things, but the rest is yours. Hell fucking yeah. The curly-haired human hooped and threw his arms around me in a bear hug. You're the best, Jay. I try, I drawled and patted Matt firmly on the back. Now what do you say? We go and see how fast this thing really is. One of the employees from the dealership brought the car out for us, and the engine purred before it stopped right in front of us. Here you go, Mr. St. James, the employee said as he stepped out of the car. Thank you, I said before I slid into the driver's seat and buckled myself in. Matt did the same and was wriggling in his seat from excitement. I pushed my foot a little on the gas, and I laughed as I felt the car hum in the exhaust. Tackle with power. We need a freeway, I said as I closed the door and settled into my seat. Like right now. I pulled out of the car dealership and started taking us out of the city. The rush just from driving this thing even down the busy roads of New York was incredible, and I basked in the looks we got from pedestrians and other drivers. As soon as we were across the bridge, the roads were way less busy, and I was able to put my foot down a little more. The sound the engine made was music to my ears, and I couldn't wait until we got onto the open road so I could really put this car to the test. I floored it as soon as we were out of the city, and Matt and I were both flush against the seats from the sheer speed the car had jumped to in a matter of seconds. Woohoo! Matt hollered and raised his hands up as the wind hit us in the face. Josh, this is incredible. Right. I asked as I basked in the breeze. God, I can't believe this is even real, man. You and me both, bro, my best friend said. What speed are you at now? I glanced down at the speed dial, and I let out a laugh of disbelief as I read the number. 180. I shouted over the wind. Holy shit, the curly-haired human laughed. You better hope there's no speed cameras around here, man. Too late to stop now. I smirked and pushed my foot further down on the pedal. The car grumbled as it picked up even more speed, and I could hear the blasts coming from the exhaust as we soared along the road. I could also feel the adrenaline from the speed pumping through my body, and my fangs poked at my bottom lip as they came through. I didn't stop though. This felt fucking amazing, like I was in some sort of fever dream and living out my childhood fantasies of driving my very own sports car. Hey Josh, maybe you're pushing it a bit too far, Matt said uneasily as the speedometer reached 200. The wind was rushing past us now, and I could barely even hear him, even with my super hearing. Josh! He shouted as loud as he could while he gripped the dashboard. My claws sprouted, and I could feel myself start to shift at alarming speed. Then my hand slipped on the wheel as I started to hunch in my seat, and the car almost veered completely off the road. I slammed on the brakes and the car screeched to a halt as I tried to maneuver it away from the edge of the embankment we were on. We both panted as we recovered from the near-death experience. Matt, I said breathlessly. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Jay, my best friend gasped as he clutched at his chest. Are you okay? Arg. I groaned in agony as I continued to shift in my seat. I can't. Stop it. Oh shit, just take deep breaths. Matt guided me. You said you shift when you experience heavy emotions, right? The adrenaline must have set you off. I'm sorry, I said again as I gritted my teeth and braced myself on the steering wheel. Quit apologizing, man, the dark-haired human reassured me. You can't help. And besides, we're not dead. He was right. It was a close call, but we were still alive. And I was still new to this whole shifting thing. I just needed more time to learn how to control my emotions, especially if I was going to be driving this car every day. You need an anchor, man, Matt said. Something that will tie you down and keep you grounded. Grounded. That's the word Mia had used when we went scent tracking. She had grounded me, and it wasn't the only time she'd been able to do that. Just the thought of her alone seemed to work, and I knew if anyone was my anchor, it was her. I felt myself start to calm down almost immediately, and I returned to my original height. My claws slid back into my fingers and my fangs retreated back into my gums. Mia, I said in realization. Mia's my anchor. That was fast, Matt joked. But I'm not surprised with the way you look at each other. She's been like my rock since I started at Lunar Corporation, I said as I started to calm down. I can't explain it, but it's like just the thought of her can calm me down, even if I'm in a rage. How come you didn't ask her to go car shopping with you then? My friend asked in what sounded like genuine curiosity. Not that I didn't mind getting to sit in super swanky cars, obviously. Obviously. I playfully rolled my eyes. I kind of freaked out in the office. All I could think about was getting the hell out of there and pulling myself together. But I didn't want her to see me that way. Surely she's seen you pissed before? Matt asked. She knows about your whole wolfiness, right? I'm sure she doesn't care. She has, but not like that. I shook my head at the thought of her face when I stormed out of the room. I was mad at my own colleague. As much of an asshole as he is, I freaked out. And I guess I knew I needed a timeout on my own because I had to literally fight my instincts to stay with her. Fight your instincts, huh? Matt hummed to himself with a knowing smirk. Josh, I think you're being pretty blind right now. I mean, the fact you haven't figured it out yet is impressive considering how smart you are. What the hell are you talking about? I asked with a chuckle. You're in love with her, my best friend said bluntly. I felt myself freeze as the words sank in. He wasn't joking or trying to pull my leg. This was one of the few times Matt had actually been serious since coming back to New York. Then I really thought about it. Sure, that connection could just be put down to me being an alpha and her being an omega, but it was something more than that. I didn't want to control her or keep her hidden away from the rest of the world and use her like a breeding mare. Every day I woke up, I looked forward to seeing her, and getting to spend time with her was the best part of my day. If I didn't have Mia as my assistant, I doubt I would have even lasted a day. At Lunar Corporation, she really was my anchor, but she was also so much more than that. If anything happened to her, I didn't even know how I would cope. The very thought made my chest hurt, and it felt like someone was squeezing my lungs with their fists. Holy shit. I really was falling in love with my assistant. Chapter 11. I'm gonna go to her, I said as I did a U-turn and started heading back for the city. And confess your undying love for her? Matt teased. Not quite, I chuckled. I'm gonna take her out for dinner first. Did I seriously help you realize that you need to ask her out already? The curly-haired human asked with raised eyebrows. That and the near-death experience, I joked. You only live once, right? Besides, if she's my anchor, then I think I'm gonna need her help grounding me, considering how today's gone. Well, you know the saying, Matt began. Keep your friends close and your werewolf anchor closer. Haha. I playfully rolled my eyes. Will you be alright if I just drop you back at the dealership? Of course, bro, the black-haired human said. But I better be getting another ride in the chick magnet. You got it, Maddie, I laughed. I didn't push it too far while driving back into the city. I didn't want to risk shifting again, so I kept it at a steady speed that wouldn't get me flagged by any speed cameras or cops. I dropped Matt off at the dealership so he could drive home in his Prius, and he was adamant he'd be stopping at his mom's place just for all of his shit, and then he'd be hightailing it to my old apartment. Before I left, I ordered him a new bed and paid a little extra for it to be delivered that night, and Matt was over the moon. It was nice knowing I could give him something as small as it was. My apartment was shoddy, sure, but to Matt it was going to be a goddamn paradise. The perfect getaway from his toxic mom, who was probably gonna give him an earful for packing up and moving out without giving her at least 3 weeks' notice, even if she did want him out of her hair. I honked the horn and gave a wave to the salesman, who I could see was watching us from inside the dealership, and then I hooked up my phone to the Bluetooth in my car and gave Mia a call from the control panel. Josh, are you okay? My assistant asked frantically. I'm fine, Mia, don't worry, I said. I want you to leave work early. Wait a minute, what? The Omega snorted in disbelief. What the hell are you talking about? Did something happen? Nothing happened, I promise, I chuckled. Meet me outside the building in like 10 minutes. Josh, I can't just leave work, the blonde weakly protested. I've got stuff to do. Leave it for tomorrow, I said. Not to pull the I'm your boss card, but technically I can excuse you from work without notice. If there's a good reason for it, Mia fired back. And there is, I said with a grin. So be outside in 10 minutes. Fine, the Omega sighed dramatically. I'll be out in 10. And this better be good. Oh, it will be, I assured her. Trust me. I trust you, Mia murmured, and those 3 little words made my heart skip a beat. See you in 10. I hung up the phone and settled back into the driver's seat as I headed for Lunar Corporation. Thanks to my new sports car, I arrived in 8 minutes on the dot. As I pulled up outside the main building and saw Mia waiting for me, I revved the engine and made her jaw drop in surprise. Then I rolled down the window and leaned my arm against it. Man, I wish I had sunglasses on. That would have really sweetened the deal. Want a ride? I joked with a dramatic smolder which made Mia giggle. So this is what you got up to this morning, huh, Mr. Bond? She mused as she walked over to the passenger side that I opened for her. The blonde sat down with a small oof, and her emerald eyes trailed over the sleek interior of the car. Then I watched as her manicured hand ran over the dashboard before it traced over the gear stick. I cleared my throat and had to look away as she caressed it, and I subtly tried to shift in my seat at the image that had flooded my head. This is nice, Mia commented as she sat back in her seat and buckled herself in. Real nice. How much did it cost? $202,552, I said in one long breath. Jesus Christ, the Omega gasped and her eyes widened. Collins got you so pissed you decided to splurge out on a $202,552 sports car. It was a necessary splurge, I defended. And about Collins? Don't worry, Josh. I think your reaction was pretty warranted. Except it wasn't. I cut her off with a shake of my head. I freaked out and I left you there. And I shouldn't have. I should have kept calm and handled it like a CEO, like my father would have. Josh, you're still new to this, Mia reminded me. Collins was purposefully pushing your buttons in there. And with all the other shit on your plate right now, I don't blame you for storming out. So don't worry about it. My assistant reached over and grabbed my hand, and I could feel the buzz just from the contact. I looked over at her to see she was smiling at me like she knew exactly what I was going through. And judging by her sweet and calm scent, I knew she really wasn't upset with how I acted earlier. How could she be? Mia was the most understanding person I'd ever met, and it was just one more reason for me to respect her. One more reason to love her. Have I managed to convince you to drop it? She asked with a smirk. Or am I just going to have to keep talking at you until you get tired of me? I could never get tired of you, I said seriously, and I squeezed her hand. And I'll drop it, but only after I take you out to dinner. That's what you pulled me out of work for? Mia giggled. Sure as hell is. I shrugged and reluctantly released her hand so I could put my hands on the steering wheel. I pulled us out of the main entrance bay of Lunar Corporation and started driving back into town. There was a super fancy restaurant my mom and dad would take me to whenever they wanted a catch-up. I could never afford to eat there myself, but it was always their treat. That place had nothing but good memories for me, and I knew the food was incredible, so that's where I was gonna take Mia. Josh, I'm in my work clothes, Mia said as if it would put me off taking her out. And I know wherever you've got planned is gonna require a dress code. How do you know that? I asked. What's the restaurant? She asked with a knowing look. The Franklin, I replied begrudgingly. The Franklin was one of the most high-end restaurants in all of New York City. Sure, there was a dress code, of which I really resented having to wear a rented suit for back in the day, but what she was wearing would most probably pass their checks. I remember my mom used to wear incredible dresses for any occasion she could, and dinner at the Franklin was certainly one of them. I had always felt out of place there, like I was an imposter or a limpet clinging onto my parents for dear life. But now I wasn't going to be an imposter. I was going to actually belong in a place like that. Oh no no no. She shook her head. Absolutely no way. Mia, you look fine. You always dress nicely for work. Exactly, for work, the blonde emphasized. I could see the stubborn look on her face, and I knew she was gonna find any excuse for me not to treat her. I didn't know why, but it was like she didn't think she deserved me treating her to things. Getting her to accept the necklace she still wore was one thing, but I knew it would take a lot of time for me to convince her that she was worthy of being treated to nice things. Maybe it was her Omega mindset. After all, she'd had to live in a world where her entire existence was basically questioned and downplayed. But whatever it was, I wasn't gonna take no for an answer. She deserved to be treated to nice things. After everything she had done for me and after everything she had been through, she deserved it. So, just to clarify, you don't want me to take you out to dinner because you're wearing the wrong clothes. I spelled it out so she could hear how weak her argument was. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying, the blonde said confidently. I love it when you play hard to get. I teased before I changed our route and started heading for the strip of stores we'd walked down the other day when we'd found a new suit for me. What's with that devious look in your eye, St. James? Mia asked with a suspicious raise of her eyebrow. I'm taking you dress shopping. I shrugged. Josh, that is not what I meant, and you know it, the blonde sighed. I know, I said. But you're coming to dinner with me at the Franklin one way or another. So do you want to come dressed in your work clothes or something more fancy? You're gonna be the death of me, she grumbled and slumped back in her chair. But you're as stubborn as I am. Damn right. I smirked proudly. So what will it be? If you're adamant about going to the Franklin, and you don't mind buying me a dress. I don't, I said. Then yes. Mia sighed again. You can take me dress shopping. Good, because we're here, I said as I pulled up in front of a very fancy-looking dress shop. I shut the engine off and quickly made my way around the car so I could help Mia get out. Such a gentleman, the Omega teased as she took my hand and climbed out of the car. Always. I winked. Now, I don't want you to look at the price tags in there. Just pick anything you like and try it on. How many times are you gonna treat me to things, Josh? Mia asked as we started to head into the dress shop, hand in hand. As many times as I like, I said. I'm your boss, remember? There's nothing you can do to stop me from doing it. Pulling the power card, huh? Mia teased. I thought better of you. Well, it's the only way I'm gonna get you to accept it, I replied smugly. You're too good to me, you know that, right? The blonde Omega asked as we stepped into the brightly lit store that had numerous racks filled with designer dresses and shelves of expensive shoes. I'd say not good enough, I countered as I led her over to a mannequin that had a gorgeous red slip dress on. I think we'll need to agree to disagree on that one, she mumbled under her breath. When are you going to believe you deserve stuff like this? I asked with a soft smile. I don't know, Josh, I mean, I'm just your assistant, the blonde protested weakly. She looked dejected for some reason, and I couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside her head. I tugged on her hand to get her attention, and her green eyes trailed up to meet mine. You're so much more than that, I whispered. Mia's eyes widened at my words, but before either of us had a chance to process them, a retail assistant sashayed over to us with a wide smile on her face. Good afternoon, can I help you find what you're looking for today? She asked. I'd like to try this dress on, Mia said and gestured to the mannequin. Of course, allow me to take you over to our size selection, the assistant said. Are there any more you'd like to try on today? Josh, how about you just wait outside the changing rooms? Mia suggested, with a bashful grimace. I've got a feeling this might take a little while. Sure thing, I chuckled. Take your time, ladies, and remember, don't worry about the price tag. Thanks, Josh, the blonde said before allowing the assistant to whisk her away to the selection of dresses. The waiting area outside the changing rooms was as nice as the rest of this place. Huge red leather armchairs were pushed up against a black stone wall, and there were a few magazines spread out on a red crystal coffee table next to the seats. I got comfy and picked one of the magazines up just to kill time. Admittedly, they weren't the most riveting read, and as soon as I saw an article about my parents, I put it back down on the table. It was still too soon, and I didn't want to waste my time reading some half-hearted attempt at a eulogy for my parents by people who didn't even know them. About 10 minutes later, the saleswoman brought Mia over to the changing rooms, and I could see she had at least 3 dresses to choose from. When you've made your decision, I'll be by the register, the woman said to both of us before excusing herself. So you managed to narrow it down to 3? I grinned wolfishly. Eventually, Mia joked. She's good at upselling, I'll tell you that much. You know you can get as many as you want, I said. Plus you'd be doing her a huge favor. I think one's enough, but thank you, Mia giggled. I'll try these on quickly, and then you can whisk me away to the Franklin. You make it sound so romantic, I teased. Is it not? Mia raised an eyebrow flirtatiously before she walked into the changing room and drew the lush red curtain shut. I smiled to myself as I waited for her to change, and my foot tapped patiently on the floor. All right, the first one is bold, Mia's voice called out from behind the curtain. Let's see it, I said and sat forward in my chair. The Omega slowly opened the curtain and stepped out in a sapphire blue trumpet dress that billowed out at her feet but hugged her in all the right places, maybe a little too tightly. You look amazing, I breathed as my wide eyes took her in. I feel like it's a bit much, the blonde said as she anxiously smoothed down the silky fabric. And I know the Franklin is the definition of a bit much. But the dress looked a little hard to move in, and Mia pulled at the fabric a little so she could move around, and judging by the slight grimace on her face, she probably wasn't going to be happy wearing that for more than a few minutes. Whatever you feel most comfortable in, I reassured her. But you'd look good in anything. I could see her warm-colored skin turn pink as she blushed, and she shuffled back into the changing room with a smile. This one is better, she called out again after a few minutes of fabric rustling. So we're getting there? I joked. Almost. I think. Mia chuckled and stepped out again to reveal another beautiful dress. This one was much more modest, with long black sleeves and a white torso. The dress stopped just above her knees and hugged her figure just like the last one. How do you feel about that one? I asked. It looks good. I feel like I'm about to go clubbing, Mia snorted. Definitely not like I'm about to be taken to dinner at the Franklin. Then let's see the last one, I said as I slapped my knees and settled back into the chair. And if it's not the right one, we'll call that lady back over, so she can get me to buy the most expensive dress in here? Mia joked. Hey, if it's the one, then so be it. I smirked. Let's hope this one will do then. The Omega playfully rolled her eyes and started undoing the back of her dress as she went back behind the curtain. This change took a little bit longer than the last two, and I could hear Mia mutter words of encouragement to herself, which was incredibly endearing. You okay in there, Mia? I called out to her. Yeah, she called back. Just a second. I waited patiently for a few more moments until the curtain was drawn back, and then Mia stepped out in the best dress yet. I braced myself on the arms of the chair as I drank in the sight of her. She was wearing the dress from the mannequin, and it fit her perfectly. It was beyond perfect. It was like it was made for her. The red silk fabric hugged her gorgeous curves and showed off a teasing amount of cleavage that nearly had me drooling. I felt my claws dig into the fabric of the chair as my eyes drifted down her form and to the slit in the dress that started at the top of her thigh, exposed her long slim leg, and the red of the fabric highlighted her gorgeous tan skin. She had let her hair completely down, and her blonde locks cascaded down her back toward her perfect ass. Mia, I managed to get out after a quick clear of my throat. I saw her eyes dart to the death grip I had on the armchair, and I watched a subtle smirk find its way onto her face. Is this the one? She asked with a playful smile. Why, yeah. I nodded enthusiastically. I think that's the one. Great, Mia said cheerfully, and she reached a hand back into the changing room to grab her clothes. I really like this one. Me too, I mumbled under my breath as I stood up from the half-ruined seat. Mia obviously heard it thanks to her wolf hearing, and she nudged me with her elbow as we started to head for the register. Flirt, she said. Hey, I'm nothing if not honest, I replied with a grin. So you decided on the red, the saleswoman commented as we came to stand in front of her. A very good choice. It looks stunning on you. Thank you. The Omega blushed bashfully. Could I have a bag for my clothes? I'm gonna wear this out. Of course, the woman responded and reached under the counter for a plain white bag which Mia quickly placed her clothes into. How will you be paying? Today. Credit, I said as I fished my wallet out from my pocket and handed her my card. Fantastic, the woman said as she took my card. Your total today will be $2,300, sir. Mia's eyes widened, and I heard her take a sharp inhale of her breath, but I wrapped my arm around her shoulder in reassurance. As she looked up at me with puppy dog eyes, I squeezed her shoulder and smiled down at her. That's fine, thank you, I said as I waited for the cashier to finish the transaction. There's your card and your receipt, she said as she handed me the items. Enjoy your night. You two really look incredible together. Oh, we're not. Thank you. Mia cut me off with a polite smile at the woman, and she grabbed the bag from the counter. Have a nice day, ma'am. You too, sweetheart. She waved us off as we walked out of the store. My arm was still wrapped around Mia's shoulder as we approached my car. Could see our reflection in the dimmed window of the driver's door, and I had to admit we really did look good. Like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or some shit. I felt a little warm at the thought of her not correcting the saleswoman, but I wasn't gonna overthink it. Maybe she was just tired of correcting people and letting them know we weren't a couple. But it still made me feel good as hell that she was cool with people thinking that, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't give me a bit of hope. So to the Franklin we go, Mia said as I made my way over to the trunk of the car. Your chariot awaits, I said with a dramatic bow and gesture to my sports car. You feeling better now that you're in a $2,000 dress? Like you wouldn't believe, Mia giggled and let me take the bag out of her hand so I could place it in the trunk. I shut the trunk and climbed into the car, and we both quickly buckled up so we could get to the Franklin. I was starving and I knew I was going to demolish at least 3 courses when we got there. Don't you need to make reservations for this place? The Omega asked as I started driving toward the Franklin. My parents were regulars and the manager was a good friend of theirs, I explained. He always kept a table free for them on the top floor right by the window so they could see the city skyline. Wow, Mia hummed. You think he'd uphold it, even after? I read in an article that he doesn't let anyone else sit there, as permanently reserved for my parents, but I've got a feeling he'd make an exception for their only living son. That's sweet of him, she said with a soft smile. And I'm sure he would. He sounds like a nice guy. He is, I agreed and thought back on the memories of Sergio dining with me, and my parents on less busy nights at the Franklin. He was a 6-foot-tall huge Italian guy who had a thick bushy beard and a salt and pepper buzz cut. He was always wearing black button-ups and suit pants whenever I saw him, and he was one of the loudest, most jovial people I'd ever met. He'd made a lasting impression on me growing up, that was for sure. But I couldn't really remember the last time he joined us for dinner. It wasn't long before we arrived outside the Franklin, and a valet offered to take my car and park it in the allocated parking lot for the venue. The venue itself was at the top of a huge skyscraper that had glittering lights lining the huge walls at night. The entrance to the elevator had a red carpet and 2 bouncers on either side, and Mia looked pretty astonished as I helped her out of the car. Holy shit, the Omega breathed as I took her hand and started to lead her into the building. You haven't seen anything yet, I said with a smirk. We stopped in front of the 2 smartly dressed bouncers, and one of them had a checklist in their hands. Name? The one with the list in his hand asked bluntly. Joshua St. James. I'm Jasper and Mary's son, I said smoothly. If you could let Sergio know I'm here and am looking for a table, that would be most appreciated. The big bouncer with the list was about to protest, but the other quickly shook his head in warning. Please bear with us, sir, he said. I'll let Sergio know and see what he can do for you. Thank you. I nodded and took Mia to the side while the bouncer gave Sergio a call. So your parents really were a big deal here, huh? The Omega asked sweetly. They were a big deal wherever they went, I snorted. True, Mia agreed with a fond laugh. They knew how to make anyone like them. I always loved that about them. Yep, it didn't matter who it was, I said. Everyone always ended up loving Mr. and Mrs. St. James. Sir, Sergio has a table ready for you, the bouncer announced a moment later, and opened the elevator for us. Enjoy your meal at the Franklin. Thanks, I said with a brief smile before we both stepped into the elevator. It took us right up to the top floor without us even having to press any buttons, and as soon as the doors slid open, I was greeted with the grinning face of Sergio. Joshua! He cried out in a thick Italian accent and pulled me into a big bear hug. Oh my boy, it's been too long. He was wearing his usual black get-up, and the familiar scent of cologne and cigar smoke was even stronger now thanks to my wolf senses. It has, I chuckled as I patted his back. It's good to see you, Sergio. Oh, and who is this lovely Bella you have with you? The tall Italian purred, as he pulled away from me and reached for Mia's hand, which he kissed. Sergio. Romano Bella. A pleasure, Mia greeted him with a smile. Mia Edwards. I'm Josh's assistant. Ah, that's right, you took over your mama and papa's business, Sergio said, and he placed a hand on his chest as he turned back to me. It broke my heart to hear about them, Joshua, and you know I kept their table off limits. In their honor. I saw it in an article, I said as I patted his shoulder. What you said about them was really beautiful, Sergio, and I know they'd be honored. Truly. Ah, look at what you've done, Joshua. The tall Italian chuckled as he quickly wiped his eyes, making a grown man like me cry. In my own restaurant, too. Mia and I chuckled as he shook out his arms in an attempt to get a hold of himself. Then he rolled his sleeves up to his elbows and cracked his neck both ways. All right, that's enough emotion for one night, he said as he cleared his throat and grabbed 2 menus from a small side table at the entryway. Allow me to escort the gentleman and his Bella to their table. Mia and I shared a look of mutual amusement as Sergio turned his back to us and started leading us deeper into the restaurant. The place really was amazing, and there was no question as to why it was so hard to get seating here. The first floor had about 100 tables dotted around the place, as well as 50 more on the second floor above, which was accessed by a grand set of dark wooden stairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched up above both levels, and as the sun started to slip down in the sky, the city lights made the view all the more spectacular. Magnificent golden chandeliers hung from the tall ceiling and were lit by candlelight. Other candelabras lined the walls for extra illumination, and the whole place looked like something out of a fairy tale. As Sergio wove us through the tables on the first floor, the immense smell of finely cooked meats and vegetables filled my nose. I sighed at the smell, which was even more mouth-watering than it ever had been, and I could tell Mia was also enjoying the luscious scents thanks to our werewolf abilities. The second floor allowed a view of both the diners below thanks to the way it wrapped around the sides of the building, as well as an even more exquisite view of the city outside. That was where Sergio was leading us. My parents' table was tucked into the furthest corner of the second floor, just beside the balcony looking down at the other diners and right in front of one of the floor-to-ceiling windows. It offered privacy and intimacy, but also the chance to be involved in other conversations if the need arose. It was the perfect place, and it had been untouched ever since my parents' death. Sergio had cordoned it off with a golden plaque that said reserved, and he had placed a vase of beautiful peonies on it. Your mama's favorite flower, he said as we approached and set the menus down in front of the two chairs. You're right. I smiled faintly as I admired them. Thank you, Sergio. It is nothing. He waved me off, but I could see the twinkle of tears in his dark brown eyes again. Please sit yourselves down. I shall be your server tonight. Oh no, Serg. I'm sure you've got a lot to do. I wouldn't. Joshua, it would be my pleasure, the Italian reassured me. And I shall return with a bottle of our finest red on the house. Sergio, I said in mock annoyance. You don't have to. It is the least I could do for the son of Jasper and Mary St. James, my boy. He insisted. Now sit, enjoy, and bask in the pleasures of the Franklin. Thank you, Mia said politely as she went to sit down. Wait, I said as I rushed over and pulled her chair out for her. Always the gentleman, right? That you are, the Omega chuckled as she sat down in her chair, and I helped her tuck it in. Then I sat down in my own seat with a sigh and opened up the menu. Before my inheritance, I had tried to avoid looking at the prices because I felt bad about my parents forking out so much for me to eat. Obviously, they reassured me that it was fine and I could pick whatever I wanted, but even the cheapest options on the menu were ridiculously expensive. I could see Mia going through the same thing I used to as she read through her own menu, and I reached across the table for her hand. Pick whatever you want, I said, and I realized I sounded just like my dad. Trust me, when I used to come here with my parents, I felt like a fish out of water. But you don't have to feel that way. This is my treat, and from now on, you're gonna be my date if I come here. Date, huh? Mia shook her head as her eyes scanned the menu. Let me guess. You used to pick the cheapest thing on the menu. Yep, which is what you're not gonna do, I said with a playful stern look on my face. And this isn't me trying to show off how much money I have. I just want you to be content. You really are incredible, Josh, the Omega said as she looked up at me through her thick eyelashes. It made my heart thump against my chest, and I had to pull my hand away from hers before she felt it grow clammy. I don't know about you, but I am starving, I said and quickly changed the subject. Me too, Mia agreed, and I heard her stomach grumble. I might have forgotten to eat lunch today. Mia, I sighed. Come on. Did you eat lunch? She quipped with a raised eyebrow. I was stony silent in response, which gave her the answer she was expecting. That's what I thought, she hummed in triumph. Today was weird, all right? I chuckled. Besides, once I got in that car, I sort of forgot about everything else. Well, maybe we should make lunch together a thing, she suggested, and I could hear the hope in her voice that she tried to downplay. To make sure we both eat? I like that, I agreed with a subtle smile. But on to dinner. I'm thinking 3 courses might be called for. As long as you're buying, Mia joked, probably to relieve the tension she felt at the prices staring back at her. We browsed the eclectic menu in silence for a few minutes until Sergio returned with a bottle of the house red, just like he promised, along with 2 glasses. For the Bella, he said as he placed the glasses in front of us and poured a small sample for her to try. It is always best to trust a woman's judgment, Joshua, especially when it comes down to wine. Mia giggled and wafted the glass beneath her nostrils before taking a sip of the liquid. Then she swished it around in her mouth and inhaled a little. She swallowed with an impressed look on her face, and she put the glass back down on the table. Delicious, she said, which made Sergio jump on the spot and clap his hands. What did I tell you? Always trust a woman's judgment, the tall Italian said, as he filled both of our glasses before resting the bottle on the table. Now, what can I get for you both? I gestured to Mia to go first, something my father always did with my mother. I'll have the white truffle soup as a starter, and the osobuco as a main. Please, the blonde said as she handed Sergio her menu. Fantastic choice, he complimented. And for the gentleman? I'll take the foie gras to start, and the Japanese Kobe steak please, I said as I handed my menu to Sergio too. And how would you like your steak cooked, Joshua? Sergio asked. Rare, I said without even thinking. Rare? The Italian asked in surprise. But you always liked your steak well done. My appetite's changed, I said and shared a brief smirk with Mia. You're turning into your father. Sergio laughed loudly. Sometimes he even liked it raw. Same palates, I guess, I said with a knowing smile. Thank you, Sergio. Of course. Sergio bowed his head. I shall return with your starters shortly. Our large server waltzed off back toward the ground floor to put in our order, and I couldn't help but chuckle at his playful character. He's so fun, Mia commented as if reading my mind. I can see why your parents love this place. Yeah, he's infectious, I agreed. Thanks for coming here with me tonight. Mia. Of course, she said like it was obvious. I mean, once I get over the whole you treating me to decadence thing, it's nice to spend time with you. It is. I nodded. And I hope next time I take you out you don't put up as much of a fight. Wow, Mia drawled playfully. So there really is gonna be a next time? Oh, I wasn't bluffing, I said as I took a sip of my wine and met her gaze over the rim of my glass. You're like my right-hand woman. The Susan O'Malley to your Victor Montgomery? Mia teased. Exactly, I said. And the Mary to my Jasper. Mia's face softened at my words, and a warm smile found its way onto her perfect face. That's sweet, she murmured before she glanced around at the other tables. You don't mind when people think we're a couple, right? Of course not, I protested, probably a little too quickly. I mean, as cool. Don't worry. Mia giggled and raised her glass with a soft smile on her face. To Jasper and Mary St. James, she said. To Jasper and Mary, I repeated and clinked my glass with hers before we both took a swig. The rest of the meal was spent with idle conversation about whatever came to our heads in the moment. The food was divine and even more delicious than I remembered. I was definitely taking my steak rare from now on, and we ended up ordering some fancy ice cream for dessert. After we'd eaten, and after another amusing conversation with Sergio about the food, I paid and left a generous tip before we headed back to the car. Insisted on driving Mia home to her apartment, and the ride back was spent in comfortable silence. We'd talked the night away over dinner, and it was honestly perfect. Mia was practically asleep by the time I'd pulled up in front of her apartment, and I quietly opened the door and walked around to her side. Mia, I softly said her name and waited for her to stir. Ugh, I think I ate too much, the blonde mumbled as she peeled herself out of the car. I'm in a certified food coma. You and me both, I chuckled as I offered her my arm and led the way up to the main entrance of her apartment complex. Thanks again for tonight, Josh, Mia said as she paused at the top of the stairs outside the main door. I really appreciate it. So I've successfully made up for my behavior earlier? I joked with a wink. You didn't need to make up for it, the blonde drawled. But this was really nice. So if it makes you feel better, sure. I made up for it. And then some. Good. I nodded. We'll have to do it again sometime. I mean, I've got money to burn now, so. I paused in shock as Mia suddenly reached up on her tiptoes and softly kissed my cheek. Her hand braced itself on my arm, and I could feel the warmth of her skin through my suit. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel my fangs slowly start to come down, but I controlled myself. I took a deep inhale as the Omega pulled back, with a bashful look on her face, and then she opened the main door. Good night, Mr. St. James, she said with a little curtsy to ease the tension. It got a chuckle out of me, and with that Mia headed into her apartment. Took my time heading back to my car, since I was still reeling over how great the night had gone, and the fact Mia had given me a kiss on the cheek. I felt like I had a high school crush or something, but I didn't care. Her touch alone set my skin on fire and my mind spinning. She was my anchor, and I knew I would do anything to protect her, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. She was mine to protect now, and I would stop at nothing to make sure she was safe. And if I was ever going to have a pack, I wanted her to be right there at my side, because I couldn't do this without her. Suddenly a sharp pain shot through my head, like a blade puncturing my skull. I stumbled down onto one knee as I gripped my head, and I panted as the pain subsided. But then I heard something. A voice. Mia's voice. Inside Chapter 12. I could hear it like it was my own inner thoughts. It was her voice, and it sounded tired and sleepy, just like she'd sounded when she said goodbye to me. Man, I forgot my clothes in his trunk, Mia groaned. That's definitely not gonna be awkward. Hey Josh, can I grab a designer bag full of my dirty clothes out of your super nice car right in front of our workplace? What do you mean? It looks like we slept together. I had cracked. I had actually lost my mind. It was the only explanation. I mean, how the hell else would I be hearing Mia's voice inside my head? Maybe it was the wine. Maybe Sergio's batch had gone bad somehow and sent me spiraling. Or maybe it was all of the stress I'd been under the past few days. It had been an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. Maybe this was the final nail in the coffin. I staggered back to the car and managed to slump into the driver's seat. Gripped the steering wheel for dear life as I tried to sober myself up, but I couldn't understand how this alcohol could affect me when the glasses of whiskey I was drinking the other night did nothing. I could still hear Mia clear as day, like she was talking right into my sensitive ear. That wine definitely went to my head, the blonde mumbled. This headache is killer. I was imagining this. There was no way I was actually hearing her thoughts. Right? I pulled out of the lot before I could overthink it anymore, and I knew that a good night's sleep would probably clear this up. I sped back to my penthouse, and I didn't even bother getting changed out of my suit before throwing myself onto the king-sized bed. Tonight was really nice, her voice said sleepily. Like really nice. I pulled a pillow over my face and squished it down as if it would block out this auditory hallucination. It didn't. This was inside my head. The Franklin, he took me to the Franklin, the Omega said to herself in what sounded like tired disbelief. And it was perfect. Even if this was a psychotic episode or me losing my actual mind, I couldn't help but hope that this really was what Mia thought about tonight. If I could take her out every night and treat her, I would. God knows I've got the money for it, and who better than her to spend it on? My mind went quiet after that. Maybe she'd fallen asleep, or maybe the alcohol had worn off. With the silence in my brain, I was able to slowly fall asleep, and I didn't dream that night. In fact, I slept like a rock because when I woke up I had already slept through 3 alarms. I bolted up and had completely forgotten about the weird psychic episode I'd experienced last night as I rushed to put clean clothes on. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when I heard Mia's voice inside my head again, and I almost choked on my toothpaste. I don't know when I should ask for my clothes back, her voice mumbled. I mean, it's not a big deal. I don't need them back. Not until next week when I do my dry cleaning anyway. But he probably won't want my clothes in his trunk. What if he picks up a girl for a date, and he just has someone else's clothes in the back? Oh my god. What if he dates another girl? Okay, it's going to happen, I guess. He is an alpha. The rest of my journey to work was filled with small comments Mia made to herself. Most of them were her fretting over whether her hair looked good today and what she was going to eat for dinner since she needed to go grocery shopping. I was still convinced I'd gone crazy, but I knew it was worth asking Mia about what the hell was going on. If anyone was going to know, it was her. Even if it would be pretty awkward telling her that I had been able to hear her thoughts for the past 12 hours. As I parked my brand new car into my allocated parking space in the lot, I made sure to grab Mia's bag of clothes she'd left in the trunk. Still made me laugh that she was concerned about me picking up another woman with her clothes in my trunk, and I chuckled on my way up to my office thinking about the doors dinged open, and I was immediately greeted with Mia's delicious scent as I stepped into the hallway. The Omega was sitting at her desk typing away on her computer, but her head whipped toward me as I started making my way over. She was wearing a gray tartan pencil skirt and a white blouse, and her hair was braided in an elaborate updo that showed off her long neck and the necklace I'd bought her. Good morning, Josh. Mia greeted me with a bright smile. God, he looks cute today. Her voice purred inside my head a moment later. Mean he looks cute every day. Maybe it's the way he's done his hair? Or lack thereof. The just rolled out of bed look is really doing it for me. Morning, Mia. I quickly cleared my throat to stop me from choking on my own spit at what her thoughts revealed. Admittedly, I hadn't had time to actually do my hair this morning, so it was just a mess of curls. But apparently Mia liked it, and I could literally smell the attraction on her. I brought your clothes back, I added as I held up the designer bag with a smile. Oh, you remembered, the blonde gasped and rushed up from her desk to take the bag from me. Thank you. I completely forgot when you dropped me off. Yesterday. I'm blaming it on the food coma. Yeah, I slept like I hadn't had a good night's sleep in years, I joked. Would you mind coming into my office? There's something I wanna ask you. Sure, Mia said in an uneasy tone. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine, I said as I held the door open for her. The blonde Omega walked in and took a seat on one of the chairs in front of my desk. I followed after her, but I stood in front of her as I tried to figure out how I was going to word this. So, this is gonna sound really weird, I said as I leaned against my desk. But, ever since I dropped you off last night, I think I've been able to hear your thoughts. Oh my God. Mia's face fell and her cheeks flushed bright pink. This is so embarrassing. Wait, so, I choked on a breath. It's actually real? I'm not going insane. No, Josh, you're not going insane, Mia sighed and put her head in her hands. So, you heard me call you cute when you walked in? Maybe, I drawled as I fought off a smirk. And about my bag of clothes? She mumbled through her hands. Yep, I said and popped the pea. So what does it mean? It means that last night you accepted me into your pack, Mia explained as she sat up and straightened her posture in an attempt to rid herself of her embarrassment. But I could hear her heart thumping against her chest and the blood rushing to her ears, and she fiddled with the necklace I got her as the reality of what she had said really sank in. You're in my pack, I asked in disbelief. That happened just like that? It's that easy. Only alphas have the powers to recruit people into their pack, the blonde said. You must have been thinking about it when I left, and the fact I've always been open to that idea made the connection easier. Is it not usually that easy? I frowned in confusion. Depending on the wolf, not necessarily, she sighed. Some betas or omegas can resist a little, but in the end they don't have a choice. It's how Drake has managed to keep all those missing people against their will, I mumbled to myself. You're not doing it against your will, are you? No, I'm not, the Omega reassured me with a grateful smile. I'm happy to be in your pack, Josh. Good, I sighed in relief. And I'm sorry for being inside your head. If I could turn it off, I would. It's fine, Mia giggled. It's just part of the whole pack thing. Besides, it's a good way for us to communicate with each other if we can't speak out loud. Oh shit, I trailed off. It goes both ways? Yes, but unlike omegas or betas, you can choose what your pack hears, the blonde explained. The connection is usually used for the alpha to give out orders. It's like a psychic bond between them and the pack that can be a one-way communication if you choose it to be. Interesting, I said as I thought about how handy that could be, especially during a fight or a sticky situation. Hey, have you thought about where you want to go hiking tomorrow? It might have seemed a little out of the blue, but I realized we hadn't really discussed what we were doing. And with this newfound communication, I was gonna feel a lot more at ease with going out there with her. Yeah, I have actually. Mia nodded with a small smile. I really want to try out Arden Woods. It's relatively close by, so we won't be too far away from our responsibilities. Just in case. I thought the whole point was to have a getaway from those responsibilities? I teased. Yes, but with everything the way it is right now, I don't think we really want to be going too far out of town, the blonde reasoned. If Drake rocked up with his posse and caught us off guard, we'd be screwed. Are you saying you don't have faith in my abilities as an alpha, Miss Edwards? I joked. I have plenty of faith in you, Mia fired back. I'm just concerned about how pissed Drake's gonna be after what happened the other day at the warehouse. That sobered me up a little, and we sat in silence for a few moments as Mia chewed on her lip in thought. You know, if you don't want to risk it, she began, I won't mind if you want to cancel. Are you kidding? I laughed. Of course I still want to go. I've been looking forward to it all week. You have? The blonde questioned as she perked up a little. Seriously? Seriously? I smiled. Plus, you're in my pack now, which means I can't just let you go hiking in the woods on your own while we're in the middle of a werewolf war. Mia giggled with a shake of her head, and she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Well, I will most certainly appreciate your company, the blonde said softly. Good, because I was cut off by my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was a little unusual for me to get a text this early in the morning, considering Mia was right here and Would have no need, and Matt usually didn't wake up until noon. I pulled my phone out and looked at the message that had come through. It was from Emily. We'd only briefly spoken so she could save my number, but that was it. But this message made my blood run cold. He's coming. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stick up and I shoved my phone back into my pocket as I heard the elevator creeping up all of the floors in Lunar Corp toward our floor. Mia, get behind me, I muttered as I started to creep closer to my open office door so I'd be ready for anything. The Omega heard it too, and she got up from her seat and stood behind me. Then she reached for my hand and held it like a lifeline. I didn't know whether it was out of moral support or fear of what was coming up to meet us, but I squeezed it to show her I wasn't going to let anything happen to her. I would never let anything happen to her. I hadn't even realized I had half-shifted until I felt my fangs poke my bottom lip and my tail raised in alertness behind me. The elevator was a few floors below us now, and I swallowed hard as I anticipated what was about to fly out at us and attack. But no one attacked. Instead, the silver doors opened to reveal none other than Drake, wearing a fucking suit no less. The black and white pinstripe fabric made him look like a villain out of a film noir or some shit, and I could see he was still wearing his white tank top and chains underneath it. He didn't look that much different from when he had shifted. His face was still wide, but his nose was more prominent and bulbous. His eyes were still sunken in and overshadowed by his thick brow, but the only thing he was lacking was the sideburns that had grown in when he'd shifted. There he is, the Alpha exclaimed with a hearty laugh. I've been looking everywhere for you. How the hell did you get up here? I growled. What did you do to Ollie? Oh, the receptionist? Drake asked casually. Her mind was easy to control. Like running water through a sieve. Typical human. Weak-willed and weak-minded. Mind control. Just another thing you would have been able to do if your parents hadn't hidden the truth from you, Joshua. The stout Alpha mocked. It's a shame. Really. It would have been nice to have an adversary as powerful as me. It looked that way in the warehouse, asshole. I spat. Easy, Josh, Drake said with his palms facing me. I just want to talk. Man to man. Wolf to wolf. Whatever. Drake's eyes flashed red as he smirked at me, but he remained in his human form. You try anything and this entire building will rain hellfire down on you. I growled in warning. You have my word, kid, the Alpha said and put his hand over his heart. This is just business. I felt Mia squeeze my hand in concern, and then I heard her voice in my head. Are you sure about this? She asked. What if it's a trick? His heart rate is normal, and I can't smell any sweat on him that might suggest he's lying, I replied back to her. I don't want to have a full-out bloody battle in my office if I can help it either, so I'm going to see what he has to say. Where are you going to talk? She fretted. Please don't tell me you're going to be alone with him. I don't want him anywhere near you, I said firmly. I'll take him to the meeting room. When we're in the elevator, warn the board and make sure everyone is safe. All right, Josh, Mia replied hesitantly. If you need me, speak through the bond. I squeezed her hand in response before pushing her further back into my office. If Drake tried to go after her, he'd have to go through me, because there was no way I was letting him within a foot of her. There's a meeting room on the 80th floor, I said as I slowly started to shift back into my human form. We'll talk there. A little privacy, Drake hummed. Just what we need. Move back into the elevator, I said as I kept my eyes trained on him. I'll follow. Why? You don't trust me around your precious Omega. He smirked. I growled in response. It was a low, deep rumbling sound that made the pencil holder on Mia's desk rattle. I get it, Drake said before he spun around and started to waltz back to the elevator. I pushed Mia further behind me until she was fully into the office, and I tried to ignore the worried look on her face as I shut the door to seal her in. Then I turned and started heading toward the elevator, which Drake was waiting in with a smug smile. I rolled my eyes as I stood beside him and hit the button to take us to the 80th floor. The short ride was silent and tense, and I was doing everything in my power not to shift and take him out in the elevator. It would be easy, but maybe he was actually here to talk to me and work this out. I didn't know how much mercy I was willing to show him after the shit he pulled the other day, but he was in my building now. Creating a scene wasn't exactly a great option, and there were people working here who had no idea that the business was actually for Werewolf Pharmaceuticals. I had to be somewhat civil about this. Otherwise it could get really messy. The elevator doors slid open as we arrived at the meeting room floor, and I motioned for Drake to exit the elevator first. No way was I going to turn my back on this guy. Drake stepped out with a dramatic sigh but started to head for the double doors at the end of the hallway. Once inside the room, Drake sat at one end of the long wooden table, but I remained standing behind the chair closest to the door at the other end of the table. You not gonna sit? The alpha asked. Am I that scary, Josh? You don't scare me, I scoffed. I just don't trust you, so I think I'll stay standing. Is this how you treat your business partners? He asked with a smirk. We're not business partners, I said flatly. We're rivals. And you've just waltzed into my territory and mind-controlled my receptionist to let you in. Here. So I will stand. Suit yourself, Drake grumbled. But I am here on business, Josh. We have a lot to discuss. I'm glad you've finally seen reason, I said as I crossed my arms. What made you change your mind? You fought well the other day, the buff alpha complimented me. You impressed me enough to not just walk in here and kill you. Bold of you to assume that would be possible, I said coolly. You underestimate me, kid. Drake smirked. Just like I underestimated you. And I gotta say, underestimating me is not a good idea. Enough with the bullshit. What are you doing here? I asked. He was wasting my time, and I didn't have any patience for idle chit-chat with this asshat. I've come to ask you to shut down the company, the alpha said as he casually picked at his black nails. I'm sorry, what? I scoffed. That's the reason you dragged your ass up here. Careful, Drake warned in an eerily calm tone. You don't want to piss me off. The same goes for me, I said as I leaned my fists on the table. So what makes you think you can come here to my building and ask me to shut my business down? Like it means nothing. Because it is in your best interest to, that's why. Drake shrugged and leaned back in his chair. You have the chance to right your parents' wrongs. Josh. My parents' wrongs? I asked in utter disbelief. What wrongs are those? Drake. Going against our nature, the alpha said with a dark look in his eyes. I tried to explain it to you at the warehouse, but you just did not wanna listen. Says you, I scoffed. I tried to explain it to your parents too, he went on. They didn't listen either. Hence why we became a little more violent in our attacks. What makes you think I would give up their company for someone like you? Asked. It's for the greater good, the alpha tried to reason. You've been taking those drugs your whole life and look how much it deprived you of. Think about how many other wolves are out there being deceived, being deprived of their true form. My parents did what they thought was right, I defended. And look where it got them. Don't, I snapped and bared my teeth. They did it to protect me. That had nothing to do with their plane crashing. Protect you from what? Drake tilted his head to the side. From yourself? From your true nature? From the power that's inside of you? He was trying to get in my head. I could feel it. He was calm and collected, but I could see right through him. He was pulling out all the stops to piss me off or win me over to his side. But it wasn't going to work. I trust my parents' decision, I said firmly, and I will honor what they left for me. Whether you think it was a mistake or not, I'm doing what I know is right, and that's keeping this company alive. But don't you see, kid, you have a chance to fix those mistakes. Drake protested. You don't have to follow in their footsteps. You can pave your own way now, Josh. Your parents, they were stubborn and they refused to listen. But you can change things for the better. Shut down the company and join me. Join my pack. You want me to join your pack? I asked. How the hell is that gonna work? Two alphas can't rule. Or did I miss something in the small print? Well, there'd obviously still be a hierarchy with me on top. But you'd be my right-hand man. And we'd be unstoppable. He grinned wolfishly. We'd dominate all of New York. It would be our territory. Free fucking reign. I'm not interested in more territory, and I sure as hell don't want to be your lackey, I said with a scowl. I'm interested in helping our kind. That's what these drugs do. Bullshit, Drake snapped out of nowhere. I don't know how the hell your parents have managed to brainwash you from the grave, but they've done it. I gritted my teeth at his words and clenched my fists. Don't fucking talk about them, I hissed. I can make up my own mind. I've not been brainwashed into thinking anything. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not your parents that have brainwashed you? Drake asked, daringly. It's that blonde Omega bitch upstairs that's put it in your head, isn't it? My claws shot out of my fingertips, and I instinctively snarled at the smug Alpha, who only seemed to lap up my reaction. Don't you dare, I growled in warning as I felt myself start to fully shift into my elite form. How dare he? How fucking dare he talk about me like that? It made me want to rip his fucking head off. She must have given you really good head or some shit if you're this willing to stick up for her. Drake carried on, and he knew full well what he was doing. You need to learn quick, kid. Omegas are nothing but useless sluts. I dropped to all fours on top of the table, and I bounded for Drake's throat. With an enraged roar, the Alpha's eyes turned bright red, and he grinned as he jumped out of the way. Just before I could get to him, I tumbled to the ground but managed to stick the landing, and I crouched low. As I snarled at him, I was fully shifted now, and all I could see was pure red. What a feisty little shit you are, Drake teased as he started to shift too. Maybe I should go upstairs and pay your bitch a little visit? See how really worked up we can get you. I roared again and started running at him before I could think it through. Drake stayed still until the last moment when he raised his fist and punched me in the blink of an eye. The force threw me onto my back, and I felt my jaw ache as I picked myself up off the floor. I said it once and I'll say it again, kid, the red-eyed Alpha said in a deep husky voice. You've got a lot to learn. I kicked my long legs out and booted his kneecaps so they caved in a little bit. Drake roared as he stumbled back, and the bone snapped back into place. Now you've done it, he snarled and leaped for me with an evil look on his shifted face. We tumbled back onto the floor in a flurry of claws and teeth. I could feel him rip and tear into my suit, and his claws punctured my flesh. I howled before I dug my claws into his ribs, and I didn't stop until I felt them slice past the bone. Drake scurried back with a whine of agony and quickly inspected his wounds. There were 10 puncture holes in his suit, and he ripped it from his arms to show the true extent of the damage. His white tank top was slowly turning red from the punctures, and even with his fast healing ability it would take a while for them to seal up, considering how deep I had gone. He panted in pure anger as his hands became stained with his own blood, and I took advantage of his distraction to pick myself up and stalk toward him. Drake's red eyes widened as I neared without him realizing, and without even thinking, I grabbed him before slamming his full weight down into the meeting table. It cracked in two on impact, and shards of wood scattered across the room. The Alpha snarled up at me, but I punched him hard in the face before picking up a shard of wood from the floor. Drake had no time to react before I plunged it into his chest. He gasped and gargled on a mouthful of blood as I pushed it further into him, and his clawed hands scratched fervently at my own to get me to stop. You son bitch, he wheezed. I thought I had him. I thought this was going to be it. But I was wrong. Suddenly the injured Alpha booted me back with incredible force, which gave him enough time and space to stagger up and rip the shard of wood out of his body. He roared in anger, and I watched as the open wound squirted out blood before his body started to contort in a grotesque fashion. His limbs cracked and snapped before they grew even longer than what they already were, and fur started to sprout from his already hairy skin in thick, dark brown bushes until it completely encompassed his entire body. Then his snarling face started to morph into a snout and began to fuse together to meet his ears, which were now much larger. Drake whined as the transformation finished, and he rose up on his hind legs before slamming back down on all fours. Holy shit. He was a wolf. Like an actual wolf. This wasn't like my elite form or the humanoid appearance that the betas and omegas had. Drake was now a huge fucking wolf. I didn't know how the hell I was going to take him down like this, especially in a tiny room. And I knew in that moment that he was right. I really did have so much to learn. Before I could do anything, Drake jumped over me and burst through the floor to ceiling window. Glass shattered and flew back from the sheer speed that he'd run through it, and I had to shield my eyes with my forearms so I didn't get blinded. When the bombardment of glass had stopped, I rushed to the now open window and looked down. We were 80 stories in the air, but Drake was using his wolf form to claw his way down the huge skyscraper like a ninja. He left a trail of broken glass in his wake, and as I stared down at him in anger and shock, his wolf head whipped up to look at me, and I could have sworn I saw the fucker grin. He'd gotten away. He'd fucking jumped out of the window to get away, and he'd destroyed my property and insulted my parents and my Omega. I roared in rage, and my claws swiped at anything I could get my hands on. The fallen chairs, the remnants of the tables, the plant pots, the paintings on the walls. I didn't care. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. It was like there was pure fire running through my bloodstream. Drake had tipped me over the fucking edge with what he'd said about Mia. And I was about to tear this fucking place apart.